L-I-F-E. That's life, or so they say. Did you know the study of life is the actual definition of the word biology? And that's what we're focusing on this episode, biological research. Now this can range from plant growth to cell communication, from bacterial virulence to actual strength in human bones. By studying the science of biology, or life, in the microgravity environment on the International Space Station, we've gained access to a whole new world of incredible science possibilities that didn't exist before. Join me as we go on board the ISS to learn more about biological research in microgravity. Hi, I'm NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson. Welcome to StationLIFE.
Destin on 2 for velocity confirmation, assembly, steps 4, 5, and 4, 6. We're moving on to step 5.
You want to go right now for that activity?
Copy, thank you.
Okay, Tracy, we copy, and that's good information. We'll pass it along.
In this episode of StationLIFE, we're going to look at biological research on board the International Space Station. We'll uncover some incredible breakthroughs made in the treatment of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. We'll look at studies of protein assemblies that will help us figure out how Alzheimer's develops. We'll chat with NASA's chief astronaut, Chris Cassidy, about the biological research capabilities aboard the ISS. And we'll look at ongoing studies to further understand plant growth in a weightless environment. So strap yourself in, because it's going to be quite a ride.
DMD, or Duchenne muscular dystrophy, is the most common muscle disease affecting young boys. It affects about 1 in 3,600. It's an incurable condition, and it results in really muscle weakness that worsens over a boy's lifetime. Typically, boys lose their ability to walk around age 12. As boys go through adolescence, they have usually additional complications related to their lung or pulmonary health, as well as, more often than not, will develop cardiac disease, heart disease, and unfortunately most boys will pass away in their 20s from complications such as pneumonia or heart failure.
In order to combat diseases like this, we have to study the structure of proteins that are associated with that particular disease. In order to do that, we first must crystallize the protein. And that crystal is basically millions of copies of that same protein aligned like a row of bricks on a wall, but in 3 dimensions. But here's the problem. When we try to grow a crystal on Earth, gravity can affect the way the molecules become aligned on the crystal surface, and that affects the overall quality of the crystal. The ideal environment to grow a more perfect crystal would be a lab that we could have up in space orbiting the globe so that we are free of Earth's gravity. Luckily, we have one of those with the International Space Station.
Since 2003, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency has conducted more than 16 sessions of the protein crystal growth experiments on board the International Space Station.
In microgravity, the crystals grow much more slowly, but the molecules have more time to get perfectly arranged on the surface of the crystal, and that gives us much better data.
One of the most promising results has been gained by studying a protein associated with Duchenne muscular dystrophy.
Studying this protein led to a huge discovery. Like a key fitting into a keyhole, we are able to design a drug that perfectly binds to this protein.
By knowing the shape of that keyhole, we can tailor-make a drug to fit into a specific location of the protein.
What this means is we may be able to slow the disease by half. Instead of being in a wheeling chair at 12, we might be able to push that age to 25. Instead of being dependent upon this patient at 20 years old, it would be 40. What we're talking about is potentially doubling the lifespan of many of these DMD patients. And it's all because of research opportunity afforded to us by the International Space Station.
This research is really just in its infancy. There are literally thousands of other proteins whose structures we need to determine, and the International Space Station is going to provide a platform where we can hopefully grow much better crystals that allow us to get structures and to learn more about how these molecules function in our body, in bacteria, or in viruses. We're doing this research not just for ourselves or our children, but for generations to come. Many of the protein structures that will be determined wouldn't be possible without the International Space Station.
I'm hoping that those trials will be successful, that they will tell us, yes, there is a way that we can keep these boys stronger for a longer period of time, that we can help their heart and pulmonary function, and that they can live longer, that they can grow up and go to school and do the things that we all want our children to do.
Welcome back. We already mentioned that the ISS is a great platform to conduct biological research in microgravity. In fact, by studying life off the Earth, we're making huge breakthroughs in treating today's most complex problems right here on the Earth. One of the exciting experiments ongoing right now on board the International Space Station is called NanoRacks SABLE, which stands for Self-Assembly in Biology and Origin of Life, a study into Alzheimer's. Whew, that's a mouthful. This experiment observes how proteins assemble in microgravity and how Alzheimer's progresses. Here's a very important video that will tell you all about it.
Alzheimer's disease is a global problem. In the United States alone, more than 5 million people have the disease, and a new diagnosis is made every 67 seconds. Numbers that are just a fraction of worldwide totals. Among medical researchers, Alzheimer's is a top priority. Researchers working with astronauts on the International Space Station are embarking on a mission to discover the origin of Alzheimer's. Although the details are still a little fuzzy, researchers believe that Alzheimer's and similar diseases advance when certain proteins in the brain assemble themselves into long fibers that accumulate and ultimately strangle nerve cells in the brain. They're sort of like the crankcase sludge of the human body, explains Dan Woodard of NASA's Kennedy Space Center. The fibers are not active, so they'll be around forever because your body doesn't have any way to get rid of them. These fibers take decades to form and accumulate, hence the link between Alzheimer's and aging. In laboratories on Earth, researchers have figured out how to make protein fibers accumulate more quickly, so they can study the process without waiting so long. On the space station, accumulated fibers do not collapse under their own weight, which makes the station an even better place to study them. A 4-inch cube containing the experiment, which was selected in an ISS research contest by Space Florida and NanoRacks and built at the Florida Institute of Technology, blasted off to the International Space Station on board the SpaceX-5 cargo resupply mission early 2015. The experiment itself, SABLE, or Self-Assembly in Biology and the Origin of Life, a study into Alzheimer's, will be fully automated. However, observations from this experiment alone won't lead directly to the discovery of a cure. SABLE is geared more towards understanding the way that Alzheimer's progresses, not towards creating a pill to stop it from happening. Although this experiment is only the first in what will surely be a series, Woodard is optimistic that it could be an extremely valuable learning experience. Everybody wants a cure, but without knowing the actual cause of the disease, you're basically shooting in the dark. We don't understand the true mechanism of the disease. If we're lucky, then we'll find out whether proteins will aggregate in space. Only in weightlessness can you produce an environment free of convection, so you can see whether they form on their own. We expect to learn incrementally from this. Eventually, projects like Sable could lead to the discovery of a method to slow down the rate at which the harmful fibers grow, thereby opening a window for a cure. After the samples are returned to Earth and are examined underneath an atomic force microscope, Woodard speculates that the cause of Alzheimer's could surprise us by being deceptively simple. There have to be chemicals or processes that hinder or encourage the growth of protein fibers. It may be something as simple as temperature or salt concentration of the fluid in the brain. Strange but true. The key to unraveling the mysterious cause of Alzheimer's disease may not lie in the recesses of the human brain, but rather in the weightless expanse of space. If an answer is ultimately found, it could very well spring from the microgravity of Earth orbit. Off the Earth, for the Earth.
You would not believe who we have with us today. I mean, this guy not only flew on the shuttle, not only did a 6-month increment on board the International Space Station, not only did 6 EVAs, but the guy's a captain in the US Navy, a former Navy SEAL. He ran, swam, and biked the Ironman, and he is tougher than Chuck Norris and the $6 Million Man combined.
Okay, Tracy, let's go back. Oh, come on, settle down.
He's also the chief astronaut. It means he's my boss. Hey man,
Hey,
it's so good to have you here with us today.
Yeah.
I am like beyond excited to have you on the show.
It's really cool to be here and be part of it, yeah.
Cool, well I'm glad you're pumped up too. You know, I think that not everybody out there knows that you just became the chief astronaut, and you are no stranger to being a leader amongst people. You were quite a leader during the time you were a Navy SEAL. So I gotta wonder, are there any comparisons between being a Navy SEAL leader and an astronaut leader?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think it's different in each environment. When I was a young 22, 23-year-old guy, it was fun to lead sledgehammer carrying Navy SEALs, and I don't think that's quite the clientele we have here in the astronaut
We try.
But yeah, it's all good either way.
So talk about Chris Cassidy as the scientist on board the space station.
Yeah, that's almost doesn't sound right, because we don't feel, at least when I was there, I didn't feel like the expert scientist. I felt like the person who was executing the plan for the expert scientist, and they had really good procedures that tell us exactly what to do, because there's so many things that are there for us to help with. And I don't know if you felt the same way. It's just lots of different experiments, and there's no way we could know it all as the astronaut.
Absolutely, and there was actually no typical day on board the International Space Station. You're either doing maintenance, you're doing science, you're getting ready for a spacewalk, or maybe a visiting vehicle, and you got to grapple it with the robotic arm. So our brains are constantly going, and that's why, like Chris says, you end up, you can't be an expert on any one thing, but you just got to be able to absorb information, a lot of it, in a short period of time.
Yep, and there's this pressure of, people have put a lot of their heart, blood, and soul into that thing, whatever the thing is, whatever the experiment or equipment or you name it, and there's this underlying pressure of, I don't want to be the guy that screws this thing up.
Right. Well, today on StationLIFE, we're talking about biological research. Can you think of can you remember back to any of the experiments that you did that had a biology focus on them? Yeah,
what sticks most in my mind were the ones of which I was the subject. And I was part of one called Pro-K, which was put protein to potassium ratio in my diet. And we would do this particular diet for 4 days at a time and take blood and urine samples throughout those 4 days. I don't know if that was one when you were up there.
Yes, I have very fond memories of Pro-K, but also I was so, like Chris said, we've got this 4-day menu that we eat specifically
and formulated. You have to eat all of the stuff, and you can't undereat and you can't overeat. You got to eat only that. That was the hardest part, I thought.
I thought so
was
too.
Getting on the right glide slope about lunchtime to be done so you weren't at 7 o'clock going, oh my God, I'm so hungry.
that's one of those interesting experiments where you eat food for a week, you draw your blood, and then you use some instruments on board the station, like a centrifuge, and a minus 80-degree freezer to store the samples, and then we wait for a...
And remember, there was very specific times on when it comes out of you until how long it has to rest, and then go in the centrifuge and spin, and there was very regimented. You couldn't dilly-dally with any of those steps to get it from you to the centrifuge to the freezer.
Our space station, in terms of life, we have an environmental control system that takes water and cycles it, everything from sweat to urine, and turns it into water that we actually drink.
You're being too polite. It turns yesterday's coffee into tomorrow's drinking water.
I was just, you're right, I was being too polite. But that's the other part about the station that actually, I mean, it's biology too, where we're taking, we're learning how to recycle things, recycle life. Water is life, and if we're going to go further on.
And that's so critical, to going further than pushing the boundaries of where we are now.
Yes. So I just want to say, Chris, it has been a real pleasure talking with you, and it's been a real honor to have you on StationLIFE, and we'd love to have you again sometime, but thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your experiences with us here today.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, man.
Thanks a lot.
You bet. Thank you.
Hey, it's me, Destin, from Smarter Every Day on YouTube. Think about this. If we're going to go to Mars, we've got to take food, we've got to take water. These are important things, right? Well, there's a system on the International Space Station called ECLIS. What they do is when they drink the water, they go, use it in their body. It goes out their body in the form of urine, and then it goes through a system called ECLIS. ECLIS can take urine and turn it back into potable water, and they can drink it again. So right now, on the International Space Station, we're kind of figuring this stuff out. For every 1 gallon of water that they need to use, 65% of it comes from ECLIS. They're drinking their pee. The rest of it, they're using fresh water. I thought that was pretty cool.
One of the most important things to a human in space is, you guessed it, food. But getting food to space is no small task. So if we could grow our own food in space, that would open up all kinds of possibilities for human space exploration. Recently, astronauts aboard the ISS ate lettuce. Big deal, right? Heck yeah, I wish I had it. Actually, it was the first time that astronauts consumed lettuce grown in space. Understanding how to grow food in microgravity is absolutely essential for future long-duration missions. It can also help us to grow plants in challenging environments right here on the Earth. Take a look at how our European partners are tackling the challenges of growing food in space.
Well, everybody knows that plants are important for the daily life on the Earth, for the daily life of the human being. For the same reason, really, plants are important for any adventure of space exploration that the human being can undertake. Plants produce oxygen, which is an essential component for our life. Plants produce water, which is also essential. Plants produce fundamental food. We are now using the fantastic resources offered by the International Space Station, which are just being now fully available even in the case of Europe, with the implementation of the Columbus Laboratory, which is an unprecedented tool for biological, which is in general for scientific research, but in particular for biological and more particularly for plant research. Gravity is an essential factor for the growth of plants. Roots grow downwards and stems grow outwards because of the presence of the gravity vector. When this vector is absent, as in space, this process is totally disorganized. And the study of the particular cellular and molecular mechanisms of this process is essential to be capable of successfully growing plants in the future in the conditions of microgravity that exist in space. European scientists have developed a fundamental role in the discrimination of these cellular and molecular mechanisms. Then the next step is to pass from the model plant that we are now using, Arabidopsis, is a plant that nobody is interested in except plant scientists because it's the model. So to pass to plants of economical value, such as rice or wheat or cereals in general, soya bean plants which are interesting for human food. And then the next step is to produce a space garden or a special space culture capable of producing a crop capable of being eaten or being taken by astronauts as their food, and also an interesting factor as a psychological relief. And we will be capable of producing plants that will be able of growing deeper in the soil, or on the contrary, which the roots growing more horizontally. And this is very important in terms of the capability of taking the water which is being found deeper or at the surface of the soil. So really the purpose, the objective, is really to translate the Earth garden to Mars or to the Moon or to the interior of the space station or to whatever space vehicle or whatever space planet or space habitat that the human being can put their feet on.
I'm just getting my safety cutter on the other side of my IDA back here.
Copy, Terry.
A lot easier without the pool stanchion.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's just like in the pool instead of that, with the exception of that big blue planet down there.
Exactly.
As the International Space Station flies 257 statute miles over the coast of Chile, Terry Virts in the initial moments of his first spacewalk.
All right, let's recap this episode. Today, we talked about breakthroughs in Duchenne muscular dystrophy, understanding how Alzheimer's disease develops, amazing biological research possibilities on the ISS, and understanding how plants grow in space. Looks like we've been hard at work studying life off the Earth to help improve life right here on the Earth. And if that ain't life, I don't know what is. So be sure to stay in touch and follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest research news. And don't forget to download our Kickin' app on your mobile device. Until next time, stay with us, off the Earth, for the Earth.